Hey guys, Bugcat7 here. Okay, it is Friday, June 28th, 2024, and I'd like to thank you for visiting the Stonewall Research 2 channel here on YouTube. Thank you very much, I really do appreciate it. And please subscribe if you're not subscribed, and please do hit the like button if you like what you hear. Okay, guys, so what I want to do is cover this article. It's actually a series of articles by this site called The Americas Revealed, and it's about the sea people in North America. And this interests me a lot because the context is that what you have here in the Americas, what they call these mixed race indigenous people, where they're anomalous indigenous people. Some of them are extinct now, like the Mandan, who had blonde hair. Where'd that come from? And these people are sort of mixed race, but are often have Caucasian features, but the indigenous people's skin coloration, like the Melungians. And I've covered this topic before on my other channel about these anomalous tribes of North America, and Harry Hubbard has also talked about it on his channel. Okay, about these anomalous tribes here in the Americas here that apparently are these what they call mixed race people, but mixed race people before the arrival of the explorers. In this case, we're talking about DeSoto, when he discovered this part of Georgia that's referenced to in this article here. And the article is written by a native person himself, a Creek Indian person. So, and it's in reference to a conversation with another native person of native ancestry, so from this region. So it's interesting, the research that this person's done is from 2022, so it's not all that long ago. And they're showing at the top of the page here this stone called the Tugaloo Stone from Stevens County, Georgia, USA. And the symbols that are on the stone are top and bottom, and then on the ends of it. And it says here, this symbol is thought to mean a comet in Northwest European Bronze Age art. So they're making some sort of comparison to Bronze Age reference to a comet through this person's research, evidently. These symbols appear on most petroglyphs in northern Georgia, so they have these other symbols to be found on other petroglyphs. These symbols also appear on the Track Rock, Westmoreland, and Forsyth petroglyphs in northeastern Georgia, USA, and the Nyköping petroglyphs in southeast Sweden. Okay, so he's making this comparison of petroglyphs, similar ones, in a completely different place across the Atlantic in another country, and depictions of boats here. So these are ships appearing in these petroglyphs. This seems like a Viking ship. This too, and this as well. So this is how he's drawing this comparison here. Okay, and I reference also in my other channel a book written about the Algonquin people and how their symbolism and mythology was similar to that of Norse mythology. Just there's a striking resemblance by his fellow Leyland, I believe, wrote a book about it in the early 20th century. Just somebody else drawing another comparison. There's many purist native peoples who don't want anything to do with Europeans, etc., etc. The only interest here is among these sort of mixed race anomalous tribes like the Creek and the Muskogee Creek and other native tribes along the eastern coast and elsewhere in the North America here that claim to be of native origins, but yet have a preponderance of other DNA in them that would suggest they're mixed, obviously, but how that mixing occurred and how it could possibly occur before the explorers got here is what's really being sort of explored in this article. And as I've mentioned before on my own channel about these anomalous tribes as well, whether they were sea people or any other peoples from anywhere else in the past. It's just, if you had a boat, you could make it to the Americas, I'm sure, but you have also, that happening, but you have the native peoples, the real hardcore native peoples, believing that they're from this soil. They were here already. That the mixing came in later on in different time periods, but they were here already. And although this mixing happening later on, it wasn't an introduction of these people into a vacant North America, because they unfortunately keep on finding, advanced, organized societies older and older. The problem for them is, like the Smithsonian article revising Alice Herdlicker's theory, they still hold on to some of it, but yet there's no proof of it. See, that's the problem. See, they're finding older organized societies, evidence of that in the Americas, further down into South America, older than any that can be found up in North America here along, let's say, the Canadian coast and, Alaska and all that kind of stuff. They can't find those. So, by right, even if they were coming by boat, because this is their new theory, the only way that can happen is these settlements could happen 5,000 years before the supposed Bering Sea land bridge crossing. So, before that, how could that be? So the only way they could happen is if they did, came by boat. But certainly if they came by boat and they were following a coastal type of navigation, which was a traditional type of navigation up until anybody brave crossing the oceans supposedly, but they follow the coastline for safety reasons and didn't stray from it. So that they can't find evidence of that in Alaska, let's say, or along the Canadian coast there, of older. So it was, you would assume that even if they came by boat from the other side there, Asia and Siberia, let's say, or whatever. So if they came from there, then you would find older ones up in Alaska and in Canada, and then, then it would get more and more recent as you travel down the coast. That would make the most sense, but they can't find that. See, that's the problem. And they talk all about it in this article from the Smithsonian magazine called the fertile shore. And this is where this revision of Alice Hurley's, because he only believed that people are here 3,000 years ago, and that's, beyond that, no. And so, he unfortunately was the head of the anthropological division of the Smithsonian for 40 years. So he set back because, the basis of his conclusions are no good. You see, much of the research is good, like identifying certain things, and, that's all good, see, but the conclusions, the most important part of it, is all askew and wrong. So that held back anthropology and, caused it to be corrupted for many, many years, as mentioned by Charles C. Mann and C.W. Saran in their books. They're the ones who pointed this out. So it's interesting what this fellow says, and it's not a real long article or whatever, but just follow along with what the fellow's saying, and it's interesting what he's found out through linguistics and other means of, that have to be looked at, again, without these sensationalized articles, or, through DNA studies, alone, they find out these things. But this, it has to be a synthesis of everything, it's just not enough. And this is what people like this are trying to do. This guy is an architect and a city planner, so, he's an educated person, and, by all rights, the first evidence in archaeology of organized society is often through architecture and engineering of some sort. It's archaeologists have to be trained in all this types of stone masonry and building techniques and all this kind of stuff that they have to come to learn, but that all comes from architecture. So does an architect who's learning about architectural styles, especially about the history of architecture, which is, a study as well. They have to know about it too. It has everything to do with it, all the building techniques of the past and how they developed into the newest ones. It's just as important. So architects are often found investigating, into historical times and looking at historical data as well. That's just part of their discipline as well. So, but what interests these Muskogee, not the Muskogee Creek, but these Creek people of ancestral Creek background, is their mixed race identification. So, it's these anomalous tribes of North America. So where did this all come from, and how could it possibly have happened before the explorers got here? Because it's understandable that these people would be mixed race after that, for whatever reasons. But they're claiming that they're mixed race already before the explorers got there. So how'd that happen? That's the whole message here. Anyway, so that's the context of it. So let's read this part. And I want to read some other parts from this series of articles written, for this site here. They're very interesting and often explore other ideas that I'm interested in too. I'm not the only one who come up with my own synthesis of what might have happened and everything between some of these ancient peoples and what the civilizations really were like in the past at some time period, within the Holocene era, perhaps even before, in the Pleistocene. at the end of the Pleistocene, some sort of cataclysm happened, and many cataclysms happened in between, as we know. So, you just don't know a lot about those things, but, a lot of speculation anyway. But let's read this thing here, because it won't take too long, I don't think, and just you get out of it what you get out of it, but it's interesting what the fellows found out. So, this is part 6 of the Mesolithic period in eastern North America. It says here the Muskogee Creeks in Oklahoma are going to have a hissy fit. So maybe these people are the people who want to sort of distance themselves from any sort of, understanding in this particular reasoning about, maybe they're happy with the, academic explanation, to just, their mixed race happened after settlers got here, and it doesn't go anywhere before that, before the explorers. There's no such thing, blah blah blah. So, but this fellow evidently is interested in some other explanation. So, by Richard L. Thornton, architect and city planner. About 2.5 years ago, I had been spending the surrealistic early months of the pandemic in seclusion when I realized I had come to a conclusion that couldn't be possible. You see, I had been working on a comprehensive etymology of Native American place names and words in Georgia, which was not based on folklore, but on university-published dictionaries of Indigenous American languages, plus several archaic languages of Europe and the Pacific Basin. 28 dictionaries in all to translate over 400 place names and words now used in English. I called up my friend Dr. Don Yates, founder and CEO of DNA Consultants Incorporated. He is also from Georgia and is primarily of Creek, Cherokee, and Sephardic Jewish heritage. Don, have I gone completely off the deep end? I have been using the deductive techniques applied by U.S. Naval Intelligence to break codes, a stack of university-published dictionaries, and a book named the Indo-European Cognate Dictionary. I have concluded that roots of the Muskogee Creek language began in the mountains of North Carolina between Franklin, Asheville, Hendersonville, and Brevard, and involved a mixing of peoples who spoke Illyrian, Latin, Archaic Irish, and Proto-Scandinavian. It's a European language mixed with Itza Maya and Pinoan from Peru that they picked up from my Itzate Creek ancestors. But even the Pinoans have several share words with modern Swedish. Don, the region in Georgia where I am finding portrayals of Bronze Age ships, European astronomical symbols, and early Scandinavian written languages is just south of where the Muskogee speakers seem to have originated. That certainly does not seem to be a coincidence. There were several tribes in eastern Georgia whose name can be translated as quote-unquote sea people in Itzamaya, Pinoan, or Archaic Irish. However, one Creek tribe had a pure Anglic name from when the Angles English lived in southern Scandinavia. Okay, so it's funny, but it's not so far-fetched that they introduced the Irish into this in similar language words or whatever it is. If what we assume was a society that stretched from North America over to Northern Europe over there. Okay, evidently that was anywhere they might get that from, I would assume. And what this fellow is assuming here, but it's funny when I think about it. The movie, The Eagle, and here's how they portray this indigenous Scotch people of the time when the Roman legion went there into northern into Scotland, into the northern UK there, and disappeared. Or what, a legion of 20,000 men or something like that disappeared. And here's who they were up against: these people here, and what they look like, as according to, I guess, the historians that did, the investigation in order to design the costumes for this film, and to make it as accurate as they could possibly make it. So it's just interesting to me what these people look like here, what they assume these people look like, that the Roman legion fell to there in Scotland. See anything familiar about the way they look? So, and you can see, I've shown before on my other channel too about these people in Russia, the indigenous peoples of Russia, and what they look like in their traditional clothing and their traditional haircuts with like mohawks and, Mohicans and stuff like that, with deer leather tunics and all this kind of stuff. So they look pretty much the same, It really doesn't look any different than tribal people here. Like these fellows right here from Scotland, I guess, as they depict in the film The Eagle, which is pretty cool, about after the Legion disappeared and the son of one of these Roman officers went looking for him there, and all the things that he found there. It was a pretty cool film. Decent. Okay, so, and there was one Creek tribe with a hybrid Polynesian archaic Irish name that means ocean people. It is Wasala on the Georgia landscape, but recorded as Guasali by the DeSoto expedition. The Shawnee language seems to be archaic Irish mixed with one or more American Indian languages. So, as I said, the eagle there, there's, some peoples from that area of the world that look like that in the past. The tribe that lived in northeast Georgia near Petroglyphs portraying Bronze Age ships were called the Soki, as in Soak River. The word means sea people in archaic Norwegian, but also is the Norse name for the sea Sami of northern Lapland. Their descendants are the Miccosukee of Florida and the Flacco Creek tribal town in Oklahoma. I continued, actually it is worse than that. I can translate many of the tribal names within the Creek Confederacy and most all of the Uchi tribes within an archaic Irish dictionary, but their Creek name of Uchi, Uch, is Illyrian from the Adriatic Sea coast of the Balkan Peninsula. The Muskogees have two words for water. One is Illyrian, the other is Latin. Yuchi is also the name of a seafaring people who settled in Taiwan, but have Polynesian cultural traditions. The Muskogee Creeks in Oklahoma are going to have a hissy fit if I publish this. Maps of North America produced by the French royal cartographer Guillaume de L'Isle in the late 1600s and early 1700s labeled the region of North Carolina, where I think the Muscogee language originated, Cofachi. The word means descendants of mixed race people. Okay, so it's just like interesting, where did these mixed race people come from that are living up here? The word means descendants of mixed race people. The famous town of Cupatakechi visited by Hernando de Soto's expedition in 1540 was obviously the same people. Recorded words from Copachequi are Muskogee Creek. The Chalac located south of them were not Cherokee, but a primitive hunter-gatherer people, probably from northern Mexico. So he's saying that De Soto's expedition found these people here, and the recorded words from Copachequi are Muskogee Creek. So, how could it be this mixed language thing here with the mixed race people here at the time of De Soto in 1540? After it's understood, but not before. That's the issue. I expected Don to start laughing. He didn't. He calmly responded with, "Yes, the sea people. They were originally from Illyria, but seem to have picked up peoples from the coastal areas of Western and Northern Europe. The Polynesians seem to have explored the entire planet, so probably were labeled sea people also. We are studying the Muskogee Creeks now and also found the Illyrian and Basque DNA. You are right on target." So it's just interesting to me that he says the Polynesians seem to have explored the entire planet. Well, that's what I wonder if he read Robert Schoch's book, Voyages of the Pyramid Builders. I was covering that book on my other channel. I have to get that book and continue covering because people are really interested in that. But I probably should just make it like a audio book or something like that, because I read most of the chapters there on it. But it's interesting what he says about it, about these Polynesian people, and what this guy's saying here. Just the Polynesians seem to have explored the entire planet. Saying they were called the sea people. Knowing now that Don was not going to laugh at me, I told Don that I had found 2 large towns in Georgia that were definitely occupied by those tall, red-headed people with supersized brains that were called the Paracusa in Peru. The towns were located on the Etowah River in the Alatoona Mountains and at Indian Springs near the Ocmulgee River north of Macon and Ocmulgee Mounds. Were Proto-Creek elite descendants of the Paracusa responsible for the large towns being later developed on the Etowah and Ocmulgee rivers? The Paracusa's DNA has been traced to southern Ukraine. It also shows up in the Burgundy region of France and among Hungarians. Okay, that's what Brian Forster often refers to, that these Caracas people were, their DNA was found to be similar to that around the people around the Black Sea region, where they also found these people with elongated craniums with more cubic centimeters volume in brain tissue than ordinary people. While again, with the artificial cranial deformation, how could that be? It can't be. It's impossible. Like I said, if I deform your head right now, it's not going to grow in volume inside. It's just going to be a different shape. That's it. Don and I continue to discuss the totally bizarre but same results coming from our independent methods of sleuthing North America's past. We finally concluded that despite what current history books say, early mankind roamed the oceans of the world until at least 1200 BC. American Indian DNA from eastern Siberia is just one of the ancient DNA sources that make up modern indigenous Americans. So here's somebody who clearly thinks that, this Siberian DNA and native people is just one of the sources of DNA that was introduced into the peoples here. There were other sources coming from the Atlantic side as well, is what's being implied here. Okay, and that makes a lot of sense, but no, none of academia believes that anybody reached the Americas before, supposedly the Vikings there up in, Greenland and Newfoundland and wherever they assume that they got to. They keep on revising their thoughts about it all the time as well. But it's probably a more complex and far different story than we know, and it seems to me that's how it really is, especially going back to the Adena and Hopewell and Bell Beaker people around Europe. And it's just interesting when they show the migrations of these people around the Americas, and it looks similar to that of the Bell Beaker in Europe, is how it's going in all different counter clockwise directions and all over there. Just doesn't make any sense at all when you look at when they show the migratory paths that these people took. It's just a total mess. It's all over the place, going in all different directions everywhere. So it's a clear indication of they don't know, and maybe what something else was going on, and they just don't understand it properly. Okay, so as readers are introduced to the latest scientific studies coming out of the Great Lakes region and northern Canada, keep in mind that other research in Dixie by two good old mixed blood Native American boys from Georgia is also uncovering a very different past from North America and Western Europe that one reads in the standard history textbooks. Okay, so that's basically the end of it. Here he's hawking in one of his books. He claimed that he can't make any money on YouTube, which is understood. You really have to have sort of sensationalized tabloid type article things going on constantly that are very short, without any sort of real critical examination or anything, just, reporting to it and saying, or whatever, which is okay, I guess, but, we're trying to see it from, I guess, from, a 30,000 foot view instead of a, 100-foot view, so compartmentalized, trying to see a bigger picture of the past here and trying to make sense of it in a way that does make sense, and not what mainstream is saying, because they don't know what they're talking about, and they're happy to admit it, like the Smithsonian in this article with their revision of the Bering Strait theory and all kind of stuff they have yet, but they just haven't found these more ancient societies up in North America here yet. So there some researchers are confident they're going to find it, and others are not. But the ones who are not so confident about it are not, are still sticking with the old theory. They're not understanding that, well, if that's the case and there is no evidence for these earlier, organized societies, evidence of it being found in North America here, how could that be if the ones in South America are older? So there must be a different story about how that happened. See, they should be older in North America and sort of gradually work their way down into South America, but that's not what they find. They don't find that. They found the ones in South America are older, and they can't find the ones up in North America. That's the problem. They mention that in this article. So he's holding this book here, which sounds very interesting. The Native American Encyclopedia of Georgia is a landmark book that starts a new chapter in Southeastern anthropology. It contains 288 pages, 34 historical maps, and 110 illustrations, most of which are original architectural renderings or photographs by the author. Okay, so he's an architect, so this is how he's looking at it from his perspective. It's sort of broken away from traditional anthropology and archaeology, and that's what anthropologists and archaeologists don't like about that when architects do this. They don't like it, but again, it's within their discipline to know these things and understand these things, no different than it is for them. So, what they make it was different, seen from a different perspective in some cases, I would imagine, like the fellow from Texas University there who went down and saw uh, Mayan ruins there, um, shoot, but they're not built by the Mayans. He suspected that the Mayans didn't build these things, that some other culture did in the past, and the Mayans came across them. That's what bothered him about it. It seemed that they were reconstructed, and that's certainly, when you look at it, it seems that way. So that was the trying to think of the name. Something Beck. Rio Beck, I believe, is the name of the types of ruins found there in Central America. The Rio Beck style Mayan ruins, which are totally different than Mayan architecture. Just, cleanly cut, finely, precisely cut stone. And that's not Mayan architecture with their rubble and mortar style, that they know well of. So it's like two different people, and they devolved, so it doesn't make sense. Rio Beck is the name of the style. Anyway, that Texas University architect professor of architecture was like, this doesn't make any sense. They don't like that, or any architect saying anything. This is the first etymological book of the Native American place names that is based solely on published indigenous language dictionaries, not folklore. 28 dictionaries were utilized. The book covers both place names and Native American words recorded by Spanish, French, and British explorers of Georgia during the colonial period, plus the Creek Indian leaders who aided the establishment of Georgia in the 1730s and the leaders of the Cherokee Nation in Georgia during the early 1800s. 16 years of multidisciplinary research went into its creation. It is a must-have reference for historians, writers, students, regional planners, architects, archaeologists, geographers, teachers, librarians, and journalists. So, he's talking his book here, so I guess he can make some money. It sounds very interesting. It sounds like a good book. But I would love to read. I'll probably have to get it. Seen from his perspective, his native ancestry perspective, and explanations for how the mixed race peoples could happen in the Americas here, in North America here, before the arrival of explorers like DeSoto, who named the place that, of mixed race people there. So, like the Melungeons and other anomalous tribes around the Americas. So how'd that happen? So if something was happening on one side, this Bering land bridge crossing that wasn't a land bridge crossing, it was by boat, that's the only explanation without finding any of the evidence for that, which they don't find. That's the problem. So, alright, so anyway, guys, just interesting to think about here, and a possible explanation for, these mixed race peoples being in the Americas, or peoples from around the globe visiting the Americas on a regular basis in the far ancient past, which hardly seems a stretch because they're practically admitting to it, with the Smithsonian's revision of Herdliska, the lunatic, okay? You just forget about it. And just kind of, he was a pioneer in the field of anthropology and the first curator of physical anthropology of the Smithsonian Museum from 1904 to 1941. Okay? All his policies and everything are all underlined in all of Smithsonian research even till today. Okay? This lunatic guy who was a eugenics lunatic, obviously malevolent, malignant personality, who believed all the native peoples were subhuman, and then if anything was found that indicated that the native peoples might have built something, done something, whatever, it was not possible for them to do it. It had to be somebody else, or explained away by other means to either minimize it. They're still using Ehrlich's stuff up until like 2012. Here's one: measure your giant carefully, and his size will shrink. Okay, this is because that's what Alice Ehrlich said. Okay, was anything he said about any research that he might have done, reviewed, or anything like that is just utter nonsense and utter garbage based on his eugenics beliefs alone. Okay, so you can forget about the whole field of anthropology. It had a catastrophic 40 years of error going on with Alice Ehrlich there at the helm, dictating policy like a dictator. Okay, so all these possibilities couldn't be explored ever. Like the Melungians or these mixed race people who are indigenous and whatnot, and how that ever could possibly happen. So, never would Alice Ehrlich admit or agree to that at all. He wasn't around for the Windover Bog people, but that's another thing altogether. This fellow goes over on this site because it's part of that sort of research nearby here in the Georgia region there. But the Americas revealed, it's about the Americas here, so that's a different story altogether. I did a number of videos on that alone. The Windover Bog people, no explanation for that either. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that little bit here. I mean, it's interesting what this fellow says and how it could be how these mixed race people would occur before the arrival of the explorers, because other people have been here already, far into the ancient past. Well, that seems more likely than not. And other things interest me, what this guy gets into on these pages here. We'll cover it a different day, different video. Anyway, guys, if you enjoyed that, please do hit the like button, and please do subscribe. We go over, we talk about some interesting stuff here that you don't hear anywhere else. Alright, guys, anyway, Bugcat7 signing out. Peace.